All right, hey everybody, welcome back to First and Mad right here at Mad Maddie's Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada. We're down here located at 8100 West Sahara Avenue. So come on down and join us right here for the show. You can actually watch us, order some food, have a good time. If you're watching at home or anywhere else, please make sure that you click like, share, and comment during the show. My name is Brad Michaels. Great to have you back here tonight. Unfortunately, we are not going to have Floody joining us. A little bit of a emergency came up for him, so we won't have him. Jay Vegas is supposed to be here, but not exactly sure. Last I knew, he was going to be here. So right now it's just me, but that's all right. We got plenty of National Football League to talk about, and I think we can handle that here. Just for a recap, last week, if you guys remember, on the divisional games, Floody and Jay Vegas all picked Baltimore, San Francisco, Detroit, and Buffalo. Yours truly, Brad Michaels. I was the only one that actually stepped out on a limb and said, I think that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be able to go into Buffalo and actually win that game. And my entire premise on that was that the Chiefs are the defending champions. They've had Buffalo's number, albeit it was in Kansas City throughout the playoffs over the past several years. But I just felt that Buffalo, based on their early season problems, probably wasn't going to be able to handle that game. So I was the one that picked Kansas City to actually walk in there and beat the Bills, and I predicted the score at 21-17. So yay me. I went 4-0 last week, and Floody and Jay were both 3-1. So kudos to these guys. They did a great job in their picks. I was the one who decided to go out on a limb and take Kansas City. Now, that being said, let me tell you where I'm at for this week, because I think it changes, and we'll come back. We'll come back to this game and we'll talk about it in depth, but I'm not so sure. And maybe between now and the time that the program ends tonight, I might change my mind. I just think that the Ravens probably a little bit too, I don't know. I think they're just too good. I think that the Ravens, they've been planning for this for years, or they're good every year. That defense is spectacular. And I think this year you got Lamar Jackson has decided, hey, look, I'm going to show everybody why I'm in the running for the MVP. I think he might get the MVP. So I may change my mind by the end of the show and go with the Chiefs. Right now, I'm kind of leaning towards Baltimore. But let's get into some of the latest coaching news and the carousel of that around the National Football League. Everybody knows that Jim Harbaugh just named as the Chargers head coach. Word on the street, I think we all realized that this was going to be probably the pick all along for the Chargers, if they could get him into the building. Brought him in for that second interview. From what I understand, he was scheduled for a second interview with the Atlanta Falcons. Bill Belichick, by the way, has had 2 interviews already with the Falcons. And, of course, we're going to talk about the Falcons a little bit more coming up. Harbaugh went to Los Angeles to meet with the Chargers. That was his second interview with the Chargers. Here's the sentiment regarding that, because they made a deal. Harbaugh was supposed to meet with the Falcons again. The Chargers had him in-house. Rule of thumb, if that's your guy, you don't let him out of the building. Because if you let him out of the building, chances are you lose him. So he stayed in L.A. They were working on a contract. So that's a done deal. Harbaugh and the Chargers, they agree to terms. Harbaugh is now leaving Michigan. He is the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. In other news today around the league and coaching changes, you got Dave Canales. He will be the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Raheem Morris, speaking of the Falcons, Raheem Morris, former defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams, he has decided to take the Falcons job. And in other big news, before I get on to Bill Belichick and where he stands now, some of these coaching changes have taken place. Vic Fangio and the Miami Dolphins yesterday made a big announcement that they have both decided was in their best interest and mutual understanding. They have parted ways. Today, this afternoon, as a matter of fact, Vic Fangio now becomes the defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Dolphins they're looking for a defensive coordinator, but it was interesting. As soon as Fangio, and I knew this as a Dolphin fan, I knew this was happening during the season. Vic Fangio was not resonating with a lot of the players. Now, the Dolphins defense, when you got Jalen Ramsey back and before all the injuries happened to him, the Dolphins defense was becoming a top 10 unit. As a matter of fact, they were ranked as the top defense for several weeks in yardage and points allowed until the injury bug hit them. As we all know, Xavier Howard went out. You lose Jalen Phillips. You lose Bradley Chubb. You lose people like that. But before that happened, they were starting to gel as a defense. And so Vic Fangio's his entire system was actually beginning to work. From what I understand, though, through exit interviews, which every NFL team does every single year, they have exit interviews with the players. They have exit interviews with the coaches, whether they're staying with the team or they're not, and all the rest of the staff. And it became apparent, I think, in some of the player interviews that Vic Fangio and his message and his style of coaching, despite the fact that the concept, the scheme of the defense, what he was trying to run was working for the most part. There were some players that were a little bit disgruntled with his style, and the fact that he was a little bit of from what I've understood, pretty much kind of rigid. For instance, you had Jalen Ramsey, who, in my opinion, is probably one of the best cover cornerbacks in the entire league. Seemed to never be the guy that was put on the opposing team's wide receiver one. Xavier Howard, when he was healthy, was covering those. Now, hey, Xavier Howard's lost a step. I think Ramsey was by far better than Howard and should have been on the number one guy at all times, and he wasn't. He was never put on the number one guy. As a matter of fact, Fangio was so stubborn, I think, in a way, when Howard went down with an injury, he was bringing Eli Apple and Kader Kohu in to cover wide receiver one on the opposers. So Ramsey was not happy. Several other players voiced their discontent. So I think the fact that Fangio went to the Dolphins management, the Dolphins probably had a little bit of an idea that this was going to happen, that they were going to part ways. So they mutually agreed to part company. So that's enough on that. But by the way, Fangio did sign today, as a matter of fact, with the Eagles to be their new defensive coordinator. So Miami's looking for a new DC. Other than that, I'm going to come to talking about something we've talked about on this show all year long. As their new head coach. That leaves two openings, basically. You got an opening in Washington with the Commanders, and you got an opening in Seattle with the Seahawks. One big name, actually two big names, still out there, in addition to Bill Belichick, are Mike Vrabel and Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera his name is being thrown around as a potential replacement for Fangio in Miami. Vrabel could possibly become defensive coordinator in Miami, but both of these guys are still looking for a head coaching position, as is Belichick. So I'm kind of wondering, is Belichick, does he really want to coach? Is there a deal in the works, perhaps with the Commanders or the Seahawks, that's just not making the rounds in the news? It's well known that Bill Belichick does not want to be in a very large media market. He wants control over the media. He doesn't want to have too many people in the media that can potentially get inside his organization, and therefore there are problems with people leaking reports out of the locker room or out of the facility in regards to any potential moves, any potential grumblings within the organization. So maybe that's something that's hampering something from happening with Bill Belichick. I'm not exactly sure. Then again, there's also the question of whether or not Belichick wants too much control of the football operation, and there's no team out there right now that's willing to give him that control. Because basically, he's going to want the same type of control that he's just had in New England, where he's basically the GM and the head coach. And I don't think that's going to happen. And then if you look at the media angle of this, I mean, seriously, you go to Washington. All right, Washington, D.C., maybe not the biggest sports town, although the Redskins were always a big deal. Commanders are now a big deal. So, but let's throw into the fact that every single reporter from any news outlet in the entire world is in Washington, D.C. to cover politics. They can certainly cross over and start covering the National Football League if Belichick was to make a move to Washington. So, I don't know if it's the entire media angle that's creating a problem for Belichick. I would say that the Commanders are probably out. I don't know. And I know he's off camera and he's not even on a microphone, but Roman, I mean, Seattle. I don't even know how big Seattle is as far as a media center, but you would have to think that if you got a guy like Bill Belichick that became the Seattle Seahawks coach, you're going to have a lot of media covering that in Seattle also. So, and he's nodding. He's like, yeah, I'm in agreement with that. So I don't know where Bill Belichick is going with this. This is going to have to play out. Belichick, he's 71 years old. I remember he famously said back in 2012, I believe it was, that I'm not going to be one of those guys that's coaching when I'm 72. Well, hey, Bill, guess what? You're getting close. So anyway, hey, tell you what, let's go ahead and recap last week's games because I know everybody is anxious to find out what happened, as if nobody was actually watching any of these games. So we had the Texans and the Ravens. That game was actually a very good game up until halftime, and it came out in the second half. The Ravens made their adjustments, did what they needed to do. Same thing with the Packers and the 49ers. That was a great game all the way down to the end. Brock Purdy didn't look his best. The 49ers didn't look their best, and the Packers just really were playing lights out. Very unlike what I would have expected from not only the number 7 seed, but a team that came into the playoffs at 9-8. The 49ers, 12-5, obviously the number 1 seed in the NFC, needed to pull that out. Now, the weather was nasty. At one point, I saw the replays in slow-mo, and the rain was coming down in such large drops. It looked like snow. It looked like snow. It kind of slowed down near the end of the game. The 49ers and Brock Purdy was trying to figure out how to throw, whether or not he wanted to have a glove on his hand or go without the glove. He threw some passes that just looked absolutely horrible. But at the end of the day, it mattered when it mattered. He was able to pull that out. He threw a beautiful, I think it was a 32 or a 36-yard pass to Kittle it was a walk-in touchdown. When he first threw it, I thought, oh God, he threw it. I thought it was going to be a pick six or at least an interception. And it was a beautiful touch pass to a very, very wide open Kittle. But when the chips were down and they needed a score at the end of the game, he got that final score, put the 49ers up 24-21, and they held on. Move on to the Sunday games. I think one of the games that everybody was very, very interested in was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going on the road to play the Detroit Lions. As a matter of fact, I know I mentioned it last week that Pete Prisco, this was one of the picks that I think he was predicting an upset on this. He thought the Buccaneers were going to walk into Detroit and rain on the Lions parade. Another game that was somewhat close. Lions pulled that one out 31-23. Buccaneers made it a little bit closer towards the end. But I think this is the game that I picked last week. Again, Kansas City Chiefs, defending champions. Kansas City Chiefs have had the Buffalo Bills number. The Bills actually pushed for a change in the rules in overtime because they lost to the Chiefs in overtime to knock them out a couple of years back. The Bills finally got that home playoff game against the Chiefs. But as I said, defending champions, and the Chiefs have actually started to figure out their identity a little bit. They're playing winning football. Second youngest, or actually the youngest defense in the National Football League, really started to come around, and especially now in the playoffs. Look, folks, a lot of opportunities for both teams that they did not capitalize on. A lot of opportunities lost in that game. It all comes down to a field goal attempt at the end of the game in which Bass, the kicker for Buffalo, didn't compensate for the wind. It's in his home stadium, though. You would think he would compensate for the wind. He didn't. It's wide right. Bills lose to the Chiefs 27-24. So that will bring me to this week's games of the week. And we're going to go into its Championship Sunday. Final championships, AFC, NFC. This is for all the marbles to go and play in the Super Bowl. So, and the thing is that a lot of guys and a lot of the fans, you win your conference championship, somebody's got to lose the Super Bowl. It's not going to be a tie. And you think it's a completely horrible year to win your conference championship and then go on to the Super Bowl and lose. Going to be a loser every year. And I'm, you know what? I'm not even going to say it's a loser. You guys both deserve to be at the Super Bowl if you win your conference championships. And to win your conference championship, that's a pretty big feat. You're going to get a ring for that. Okay, it's not the big bling bling ring like the Super Bowl winner gets. It's not the Super Bowl hula, okay? But a conference championship is this is so stupid of me to actually say this, but it's the second best thing to a Super Bowl. I mean, you won your conference. That in and of itself is a very difficult task. It's amazing to me the run, speaking of the Chiefs, that the Chiefs have been on. This will be the first AFC championship game, and this is their sixth straight, and the other five, the Chiefs hosted that AFC championship game. So they're going to be on the road this week in Baltimore. Just going through some of these stats, I'm telling you guys, this is a really, really interesting week because the Ravens are probably the best team right now in the National Football League. I would say the 49ers were on that same pedestal, but watching the way they played last week against the Packers, I know the weather was bad. I know the injury bug hit them. You lose Deebo Samuel in the second quarter, and he's out for the rest of the game. Actually, you lost him in the first quarter, I believe. He tried to come back, and he couldn't. Nothing as far as broken bones, no torn cartilage, but he's got a very deep bruise in the shoulder. He's questionable. I understand today in practice he was limited. So do we see him in the game? Is he going to be ready to go? Is he going to be limited as far as he's only at 75, 80%, if that? Or is he going to be, his legs are fine, so we can bring him in and we can use him as a decoy. Problem with San Francisco and that offense, this is a three-headed monster. I'm not going to talk about Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy can pretty much handle what he needs to handle at the quarterback position. I think if you have to put the entire game on his shoulders, that's where I have a little bit of a question about whether or not he's going to be able to handle that. So when I say it's a three-headed monster, it's a three-headed monster with McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle. You miss one of those cogs in the wheel, like Deebo Samuel, who helps set up everything else for McCaffrey and Kittle, and likewise, they all set up after, they all feed off of each other. So if you're missing one of those pieces, you notice San Francisco will struggle. They struggled earlier in the year when Samuel was out. As a matter of fact, I think that was in the middle of their 3-game losing streak. So very interesting to me to see what they're going to be able to do if Deebo Samuel is not 100% in this game. The defense for the 49ers, lights out. The Lions, a little bit of a problem in the defensive secondary. But I think in that situation, you've got a point where Deebo Samuel being out, he's a double threat. He's a double threat to run the ball and to catch the ball. So if you got a guy like that's out of the game, your defense, you get a little bit of help. That defensive secondary for Detroit, I don't know. Maybe you bring in a nickelback, and you jam the box a little bit. So you take away the run with Christian McCaffrey. You get a decent linebacker to cover Kittle, and you got that fifth back that's able to handle any other receiver. Ayuk, great catch last week. Great game by him. I just think that San Francisco becomes a totally different dimension as an offensive team without Deebo Samuel in the mix. So I have to go to Detroit. If he's out of the game, I think Detroit has a very, very good chance at winning this game. And they had a good chance regardless. Detroit, I don't want anybody to think anything about Detroit as being a lesser team coming into this game. Both of these teams deserve to be in the championship game, and certainly Detroit is flying high, and Dan Campbell's got them playing some of the best football I've ever seen a Detroit team play. So as far as a pick for this game, I'll tell you, I'm torn on this one. As a matter of fact, I mean, being from Las Vegas, I decided this week I was going to go ahead and take a flyer on this. So I went and put money on the Detroit Lions to win it all at plus 800. So I have a ticket for the Lions. Sorry, Jesse or Jay Vegas or whatever. The dude's supposed to be sitting over here tonight. I know you're a 49ers fan, but here it goes. No show. Lions win the NFC Championship and go to the Super Bowl, and my Super Bowl ticket is still alive for plus 800 on the money line. Thank you. That'll teach you not to show up at a show. All right. Let me run down. I'm going to run down some of these stats. I think I actually have the Chiefs game. Nope. Let me pull up the. All right. We'll take a look at the Detroit Lions. Last week in that game, obviously final score 31-23. Lions scored 14 points in the fourth quarter, and Tampa Bay scored 6. Tampa Bay just had a hard time. Really, they couldn't score touchdowns. That was the biggest thing for them. And game was pretty much out of hand, and they got a touchdown and missed the 2-point conversion. But if you take a look at the overall stats in that game, we'll take a look at the box score. Fairly close game. I mean, the Buccaneers came in there ready to play. Baker Mayfield, a little bit of a tough day. I think that he played good enough for them to win. You look at first downs, 26 for the Lions to 23 for the Buccaneers. Third down efficiency, the Lions were 42.9. Tampa was 33.3. That's never good. We used to talk about this all the time on Dolphin Radio. If you're under 40%, actually, if you're under 45% on third down conversions, that's not a good recipe for success in the National Football League. Total yardage, let's see here, that was total net yards, 391 for the Lions and 408 for the Buccaneers. A little bit off on that, because I think if you take a look at the time of possession, the Lions controlled the clock for 32 minutes exactly. It's a great game. It was actually, in my opinion, wasn't as close as the final score indicated. Do the Lions have some issues going into San Francisco? Sure, they do. Like I said, the defensive secondary is a little bit suspect. So they're going to have to step up. But this is a league where they always talk about, hey, next man up. You got to do your job. You're on a 53-man roster for a reason. So we'll see. But I'm going with the Lions empty seat. So All right. We'll move on now to I guess we got to talk about the Chiefs and Bills in depth. This is a great game. I don't know. I'm kind of lost for words with this game. Let me scroll down here and get to the main stats. It was close all the way throughout. It was 17-13 at halftime in favor of the Bills. Chiefs came out, got a touchdown. Both teams got a touchdown in the third quarter. Bills couldn't score in the fourth quarter. Now, both teams had their chances. I kind of alluded to at the beginning. Ball bounces one way, get the ball going through the end zone, touchback, boom. So the Chiefs lost opportunities. The Bills lost opportunities. The failed kick at the end. Look, this happens. National Football League. A lot of times they were talking about it this week on NFL radio, and they were talking about when it comes down to your kicking game, there are teams that go forward in the playoffs versus teams that don't because their kicker makes a play. Their kicker makes that kick. That's why you have these guys. That's why they're called specialists. That's their job. Go out there and kick that field goal. I don't care where the ball is. I don't care what the field position is. I don't even care if it's snowing or if it's raining. You're the guy. You made this roster. You're the kicker. You go out there and you make that kick. And to go out and then to basically, from what I understand, admit that you didn't adjust for the wind in your home stadium and you miss a kick to tie the game at the end. You miss it wide right. And I don't know if you watched the game. He missed that thing so wide right. I mean, there are planes right now taking off from Las Vegas on their way to Brazil, and they're flying way off to the right because I just got a text message from, what is this, the week for car accidents? Jay. He's in a car accident. He's with the police. Wow. I mean, it's just, you know what? I'm taking a lift home. I'm going to pack up the equipment tonight. I'm taking a lift home. I ain't taking a chance. I'll get in an accident with the lift. That way I can sue Lyft though. All right. So anyway, that's why Jay's not here tonight. So yours truly turn this into the Brad Michaels show. All right, let me scroll down here and get some more stats. I'm completely at a loss for words. This is like, okay. All right. Nothing really major stands out at me other than Pacheco, 97 yards on the ground. Mahomes, his rating was 131.6. Mahomes did what Mahomes does. You look at Josh Allen, 86.1 quarterback rating. Bills never really got anything going. I mean, Josh Allen, he was the leading rusher for the Bills, 72 yards on 12 carries for a 6-yard average. In the playoffs, if your leading running back can't be the leader in the rushing yards, that's another problem. Now, Mahomes, he had 19 yards on 6 carries, 3.2-yard average. Longest was 24. So that tells you right there. Mahomes did what Mahomes does, and he moves that team and he gets them down the field. Travis Kelce targeted 6 times, caught 5 of them for 75 yards, 15-yard average, and 2 touchdowns. That made Taylor Swift really happy. Had to love Jason Kelce, Travis's brother, center for the Philadelphia Eagles, in the stands, down there with the Bills Mafia, drinking beer and celebrating, shirt off, everything. It was awesome. Awesome to watch it. And the best thing, and I don't think it's gotten enough press coverage, Jason, there was a little girl. She must have been maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old. She had a sign that said, "I love Taylor Swift." And she was holding it up and Taylor Swift wasn't seeing it. So Jason Kelce goes down, gets this little girl and her sign, picks her up, shirtless still, right? Picks her up, takes her up to the booth, to the suite where Taylor was sitting in there watching the game, and has a little girl hold her sign up so that Yeah. So then Taylor Swift gave her a thumbs up. Yeah. I'm telling you, that's what I love about the National Football League. Especially you got people like Travis Kelce and his brother Jason. Awesome people. You know, Chris and his mom, they went to Germany when the Chiefs played the Dolphins. And they went on a tour like the day before. And Travis and Jason's mom, she was on the tour with them. So they spent the whole day with Donna Kelce. She had a ball. So she's an absolute wonderful person. And that, from what you can tell, I mean, just watching these guys and watching the family, that's a great atmosphere, and I love to see it. So hats off to Jason Kelce. Thank you so much for making that little girl's millennium, most likely. Let's see if I can take a look here at some of the other stats that stand out at me. No interceptions by either team, which was, it was an incredibly hard-fought team. 2 fumbles by Hardman. He lost one of them. And Josh Allen, he had a fumble, but he didn't lose it. But the Bills as a team, 2 fumbles and 1 lost. So, I don't know. Take a look at this. The Bills, first downs, 27-21. Third down efficiency. Here's where I just said it. If the Bills were 50%, the Chiefs 20%. But I guess that's probably a one-off when I'm saying if you're not 40% or higher or 45% or higher on third down efficiency, that's a losing proposition for a National Football League team, for any football team. That's just, I think, you have to look at it. I think that's just how good Mahomes is and the things that a guy like Patrick Mahomes can do for your team to compensate for any other inefficiencies within the team. Look at this a little more. Time of possession, again, massively in favor of the Buffalo Bills, 37 minutes and 3 seconds. Just looking at the stats and not looking at the score, 37 minutes of time of possession would tell me that this was a complete beatdown of the Kansas City Chiefs by the Buffalo Bills. The final score, though, is Kansas City 27-24. Now, I know there are a lot of people out there that are going to blame the refs. They're going to blame the weather. They're going to blame, there were bad bounces. There were bad things that happened to both teams. The Chiefs were just able to connect when they needed to connect and get the job done at the end of the day. That's all there is to it. Defending champions, maybe it's a little bit of that defending champion mojo. I don't know. But the Chiefs win. Now, let's get into this week's matchups a little bit more. So the Chiefs, they got to go against the Ravens. All right. Well, let me see if I can pull up the Ravens information here. A little bit more on the Ravens. This is this one. That one. Okay. So if you look at what the Ravens have done, and the Ravens, guys, at the end of the year, early on in the season, I will even go as far as to say maybe as far back as week 10, week 11, I was still looking at the Philadelphia Eagles being what I thought from top down was probably the most solid roster. To watch the Philadelphia Eagles collapse the way that they did and finish their season, I think the regular season they finished 1-6. So you throw in the playoff loss, 1-7. They're all surprised as a team as to what transpired in their season in that locker room. So much to a point that they fired their defensive coordinator. We just talked about Vic Fangio leaving the Dolphins. He's now the Eagles defensive coordinator to basically be closer to his family. Hope that works out for you, Vic. I don't know. You look at a guy like, speaking of Jason Kelce, you look at a guy like Jason Kelce who practically in tears in that playoff loss to the Buccaneers, and many people speculating that this is his last season. He's going to go ahead and retire. We already know Travis Kelce, his brother, the tight end for the Chiefs, has said that this is his last season. He's going to retire at the end of this year. Are the Kelce brothers, are they going to make an announcement together that they're both walking away from the game. I don't know. I mean, you look at this Ravens team, guys, and it was close. It was tied 10-10 halftime, and then they make their second half adjustments, and the Ravens came out and just poured it on. The Texans looked like, kind of, in my opinion, what we thought the Texans might look like all year. First downs, 22-10 in favor of the Ravens. Third down efficiency, 33.3 for the Ravens. Not good. They've kind of been like way all year. Texans, 33.3. So again, you got a team that you're playing, and this is where that statistic can change. Your offense isn't able to do more than 33.3% on third down efficiency. The other team, their defense is as good as the Ravens. Their offense can struggle a little bit, and manage to put up the points that they did and pretty much beat the snot out of you. So total yardage in that game, let's see, total yards was 352 for the Ravens to 213 for the Texans, and most of that came in the first half. Time of possession, another big, this is huge. Over 37 and a half minutes of time of possession for the Ravens. Look, I don't care how good you are. I don't care if your quarterback is CJ Stroud. I don't care if your quarterback is Tom Brady. If you have the ball for 22 minutes and 25 seconds in a game, you're not getting a whole lot of scoring opportunities, because guess what? You don't have the ball. So unless your defense is scoring, that's a long day for you. The Ravens moving forward this weekend against the Chiefs. All right. I've already told you how I feel about any team being the Super Bowl champions. It's always said, you want to become the Super Bowl champions, you got to beat the defending champions. The Bills weren't able to do it. The Dolphins weren't able to do it. Had the Dolphins been healthy, I don't know if the Dolphins would have been able to do it unless they were at home. Unfortunately, we'll never know, because the Dolphins were not at home. They were a wild card team. They had to go on the road. Super Bowl champions. You want to be the Super Bowl champions, you beat the Super Bowl champions, period. That's why it's so tough. And what the Chiefs have done in 6 seasons to make 6 straight AFC championship games, I don't know. Everybody talks about the New England Patriots and how great they have been in their run over the last 24 years, winning 6 Super Bowls, going to as many AFC championship games as they went to, in the record that they put together. They never pulled together 6 AFC championships in a row. The Chiefs won 5 of those, and all 5 of their wins were at home in Arrowhead Stadium. Now they're going to go on the road for the first time in an AFC championship game. They've already proven that they can win a playoff game on the road. They beat Buffalo last week. This is a little bit of a different beast. Baltimore, I hate to say it, because I'm probably not the biggest fan of John Harbaugh. Actually, I like Jim a little bit better. I'm not glad that he's back in the National Football League, because he's coaching in the AFC. So now we got 2 Harbaughs in the AFC. It's not going to be fun. But I got to give the guy, every single year, and it might not have the best offense. They've won Super Bowls with offenses that just look like it's that defense year in and year out. If you want to aspire to be a championship caliber football in the National Football League, take a look at the Baltimore Ravens defense. I can go all the way back probably to the late 90s, and especially to 2003, and look at the Ravens defense and go, wow. Miami Dolphins, look at that. Make that your defense. Figure out who those guys are. What are their metrics? What's their makeup mentally? What's their makeup physically? Get these guys on your roster. Get guys like that on your roster. But here's the thing. The Baltimore Ravens, and this is where the Chiefs differ. And the Chiefs were playing a little bit more physical defense towards the end of the year, but the Chiefs have always been one of those defenses, kind of like the Dolphins have been. And for years, I've hated the fact that the Dolphins, not only on the offensive side of the ball, but also on the defensive side of the ball, a little bit smaller, try to go for that speed factor, which you have to play a little bit more finesse. And then, of course, these guys, they all want to like lead with their shoulder and just put a hit on somebody instead of wrapping them up and tackling them. The Ravens, they smash you in the mouth. When they make a tackle, they wrap you up and they take you down. They're not trying to lick you with their shoulder. They're a very physical defense. And I think this is going to be a game that Kansas City's weaknesses this year in the offense, it's going to show. You don't have the receivers. It's very obvious for the past 2 seasons that the Chiefs, well, of course, they won the Super Bowl last year, so I can't really say they missed Tyreek Hill that much last year because they won the Super Bowl. This year, the absence of Tyreek Hill obviously showed. You don't have anybody. You even brought Mecole Hardman back from the New York Jets, and he's not done anything for you. And as far as I know, he's questionable this week. Mahomes and Kelsey can't do this by themselves. And that Ravens defense, they're going to shut down Kelsey. So somebody else better step up, or Kelsey just better have the damn game of his life, him and Mahomes both. Because otherwise, it's going to be a rough week. Offensively for the Ravens, the Chiefs, this is the second youngest defense. Actually, it's the youngest defense in the league. I keep saying the second youngest. I think they're the youngest defensive team in the league. If not, they're the second. They were holding the Chiefs in games at the beginning of the season that the offense could not get going. The offense was sputtering. So for the Chiefs to be, not only in the playoffs, to be honest with you, although the AFC West was very, very weak, but there was a time when the Raiders made that change with Antonio Pierce. And by the way, congratulations to Antonio Pierce being named as the Raiders head coach. Great move. Mark Davis, thank you. I think I mentioned this last week. I about put my fist through the roof of my car when they made that announcement. But for the Chiefs to actually be where they are, it is thank you to this defensive unit that has stepped up all year long, and as the season's gone on, they've gotten better. So they got into the playoffs, and this is a championship caliber defense. They're playing very, very well. With that said, are they going to be able to knock off Lamar Jackson and that Baltimore offense? This is an offense that can sputter. This is an offense that I think goes about as far as Lamar Jackson takes them. So my final take on that game basically is if Lamar Jackson continues to play at an MVP level and he doesn't make mistakes and they don't have turnovers, this is going to be a tough day for the Chiefs. And I think my final prediction on this game is going to be the Ravens actually win this game. And I'm going to say the Ravens win this game 27-17. Come back to the Lions and the 49ers. I didn't give you a score prediction in that one because I hadn't completely figured that out yet. But I think the Lions are actually going to squeak this one out, and it's going to be very, very close. A lot of people are saying that this could be a shootout. I don't know if I actually see that based on what we saw last week, the 49ers versus the Packers, and then the Lions game against the Buccaneers. I think you're going to see a defensive battle this week. I think at the end of the day, though, I think you're going to see Jared Goff is going to get that job done. And I'm going to predict that Lions score is going to be 27-21. So, man, I'm running out of time. I've been sitting here talking for 44 minutes. I wish I had somebody to come down here and ask a question or something about the league. Hang on, I got a text message. Let's see what's going on here. All right, so somebody ran our co-host off the road. and he hit a pole. And I know what I talk about. I don't know for sure if it's going to happen. We're trying to put it together, but then again, there's going to be some sort of an NFL party on that Thursday night before the Super Bowl. And as everybody knows, because we've talked about Chris on this show, my friend Chris Barker is the Miami Dolphins Fan of the Year for 2023. Now, the voting for actual NFL Fan of the Year closes on February 8th. February 8th, by the way, is the night before the Super Bowl, our show night. And Chris has agreed to come onto the program, but there's an NFL awards show that I think is on that night. And because he mentioned it, I don't know if they're going to that show and if that show is potentially to make him or to let him know if he's the official winner. So look, Chris is going to be here that night if he can. If he can't, well, then we'll get him on another time. We'll bring him in and interview him. But it's a perfect opportunity to have him. Is he going to be in town and have him right here in studio with us live? But anyway, so, and on that happy note, the thing is, a couple of weeks ago, I threw out my book. It was just a joke, how I turned $1,000 in free play. We're in Vegas, so you get a lot of free play out here. How I turned $1,000 in free play into $25 in cash. I'm gonna have to rewrite that because this week I've turned $300 in free play into $600 in cash. I got another 100 while we were waiting. So, so I had to change the name of the book. Damn it. I know you're off camera and nobody can hear you. You got any questions about this week's games to fill up 13? All right, let's zoom in on the fire. What happened to Pittsburgh? Pretty much. The thing is with Pittsburgh, and no offense to Angel, who's no longer here and not on the show. I've spoken to her a couple of times. She's a very big Pittsburgh fan. Pittsburgh did a great job at the end of the season to even get into the playoffs, and they needed some help that final week of the season. Mike Tomlin, hats off to him. Their head coach. I mean, that guy, I don't think he's had a losing record since he's been the coach. Make the playoffs just about every year. But here's the problem. Their team, because they finished, this was a problem that the Dolphins had for many, many years. And I think we're kind of falling back into that. You get into this mediocrity where you're not bad, but you're not great. Right. So you're kind of in the middle. So when the draft order comes around, and the draft is where a lot of teams, you build your team on the draft. So the Steelers are always picking in the later part of the round, 15th and beyond. But the difference makers in the NFL draft, there's always outliers, but usually your difference makers are going to be in the first 12 picks. So if you're outside of the top 12, all right, you got a guy that's going to be a solid starter, but he's not going to be a star. Because we've already talked about, think back to some of the earlier shows, we were talking about the statistics of the number of players in NCAA Division I and Division II and what that translates to as far as getting to the NFL, and the percentage is, it was less than 8%. It's actually lower than that. Especially when you throw in these kids that they're coming out of high school that make it to the pros. I mean, you're cream of the crop. So it goes back, and I know some of these playoff games this year was great. This year, most of the playoff games have been fantastic, at least up until the second half. Last weekend's game, every single game was tight and close during the first half. You go to intermission, and then they came out and either they slugged it out in the second half, or a couple of teams made their adjustments, like the Ravens did, and were able to come out and do what they needed to do in the second half. But this is a tough league. But for Pittsburgh to have the run that they've had is incredible. For Mike Tomlin to have that run, pretty incredible thing. But again, you're starting to see it. You're starting to see that some of the draft picks that they're getting, these guys are not superstars. They're solid starters. They're guys that are going to make your roster. I mean, you're picked in the first, second, or third round. Chances are you're making a roster. But for an impact player, it's got to be in the top 12. But yeah, Pittsburgh did an outstanding job just to make it to the dance. Same for the Dolphins. I mean, and I don't mean to say this because I'm a Dolphins fan. The Dolphins had a very, very good team, and I think it's a shame, not only for Dolphins fans but also for anyone that's a fan of the National Football League. And I think even Floody would, even Jay, they would agree with me when I make this statement, is that it is a shame that we watched the Dolphins have the injuries that they had. Because at one time, there was as many as 25 guys. You got a 53-man roster. At one time, there was as many as 25 guys listed on their injury report, and that's not counting the guys that they already put on injured reserve that are out for the season. So for them to make the playoffs, and then everybody's like, well, yeah, but they sucked against the Chiefs. No, guys, it was 16-7 at halftime. Miami couldn't get anything going in the first half. It was 16-7 at halftime, and then they got shut out in the second half, 10-0. So they lose 26-7. Yeah, it looked bad. It was bad, but you got to remember, Miami basically hired about 3 guys that were basically out of the league. These guys, they hired these guys off the street, said, here, put on a uniform and go play. I mean, what was next? Going to go up into the stands and look at Chris Barker and go, hey, Chris, come on down here, put on a uniform, go in, That's how close these guys are. I mean, this is the National Football League. This is professional football. You are a professional. You made a 53-man roster. Even if you aren't on the 53, you might be on the practice squad, which I made a mistake earlier in the year. I said the practice squad was 8. I forgot during COVID, they expanded the practice rosters to 16. And the other thing is, though, for every single team, it's an even playing field as far as salary cap, et cetera, et cetera. Some teams handle the cap better than others. Some teams have players that, okay, I'm not going to be a selfish player. I'm already making millions and millions of dollars. What's another million here or there? I don't need the more millions. I want to win a championship. So therefore, I'm willing to step in, come up to my front office, or when they reach out to me and they go, hey, look, we want to keep you here next year. You're under contract. And it's not a matter of keeping you here, but to keep you here and to keep this team intact and keep us at the level where we're playing right now, we got to restructure some contracts. So we need to add on a couple of more years to yours, and we'll void those. Those would be voided years. But what it does, when you do a voided year, it allows you to take that bonus, the signing bonus that you paid them, and prorate that out over the 2 voided years. So it comes off of your salary cap for the next 2 years, right? So there's a lot of different things they can do when they play around with the salary cap that some of these players are just flat out selfish. It's like, no, I want mine. Okay, so case in point, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say this. I'm going to rip on one of my former, soon to be former Dolphin players, Xavier Howard. Dude, you did a hold-in in 2021. For those of you that don't know what a hold-in is, the player is under contract, but he's disgruntled because he wants a new deal. So he doesn't hold out. In other words, he doesn't stay away from the practice facility, because if you're under contract and it comes time for OTAs, which are team activities, they're organized team activities. OTAs, or training camp, which is basically an OTA, okay? When it comes time for those activities, you are under contract, you report, you are there, because you're required to be there under your contract. So a player that holds out because I want a new contract, I want more money, decides, you know what? Go ahead, find me. Find me $50,000 a day, because the league's not going to find you. It's the team that finds you. I'll sit out. You can find me $50,000 a day. I don't care, right? Or as Floody would say, I don't give an F. Put the tape over my mouth. I didn't say the full word, though. But so he has a hold in. A hold in, folks, is I'm under contract. I don't want to get fined $50,000 a day, so I'm going to report to the team activities. But, I pulled my hamstring. Oh, I got a calf, but oh, I can't practice. I can't participate. I'll go over here and sit on the sidelines and I'll ride the stationary bike. But I'm here and I'm disgruntled and I want more money. That's what Xavier Howard did. Now, I'll give him this much. Near the end of the 2021 season, which was a complete wash for the Dolphins because we started out 1-7. Then we rattled off 7 in a row and almost made the playoffs. And of course, that cost Brian Flores his job. There's a lot of other reasons why Brian Flores was kicked out as the head coach, but Xavier Howard, he played a pretty decent season after the Dolphins negotiated with him and gave him a contract extension, and he got new money. Made him the highest paid cornerback in the league. 2022 rolled around, and all of a sudden, I got a hamstring injury. Then this year, same thing. I got a hamstring. Well, he ended up getting injured. He had a bad foot injury that ended up costing him the last game of the regular season. Actually, I think almost, not mistaken, his last 2 games of the regular season. And then he missed the playoff game against the Chiefs. And I know the foot injury was serious. So, Xavier, I'm not saying that you were faking the foot injury. I'm just saying that for whatever reason, and who knows, maybe the hamstring was bad. It's a soft tissue injury. You know, how do you really know a soft tissue injury? You put them on an MRI and it's red, or it's purple. Okay, well, there's a little inflammation there. How bad is the inflammation? I know guys that played back in the 80s and the 70s. Oh, playoffs? Hey, I got to play. I don't have a broken bone. Hit me with the needle. I'm going to go play. Hydrocortisone, right? And I remember as one of the guys, and I'm not going to say him by name, and I know him. He was talking about, yeah, we took the needle. He said, I wasn't the only guy in the locker room. He said there was probably 12 or 15 guys lined up at the trainer's room taking the needle because there's the playoffs. You're playing. And you look at him and you're like, wait a minute, I thought you told me in the offseason he was going to heal. Well, yeah, it heals. But the fact of the matter is you didn't rest like you were supposed, like you probably should have. You played a game and you went full speed because you were on the hydrocortisone and you couldn't feel anything. So is it going to heal? Yeah, but it did more damage because you kept on playing instead of taking the rest as you should have taken. So, but that's what these guys did. Did I ever tell you, I have 3 minutes left. I'm going to tell you a story about Larry Zonka. Larry Zonka, when you played for Coach Shula, you didn't miss time. You better have a broken neck. You better be dead. Okay. If you're going to miss game time when you played for Coach Shula, I want to see your death certificate, basically. So Larry Zonka, he ended up coming out with a really, really bad case of turf toe. He barely finished a game, and he was so bad that they sent him home right after the game. They didn't know. He was so bad, they didn't know if he was going to be able to play the next week or not. Well, as Larry's told the story, hey, I played for Shula. You know, you weren't missing game time. Larry said he couldn't sleep that night. He got up and his toe, couldn't put a shoe on, right? His toe was swollen up about this damn big, right? And it just, you could see the toe and the toenail was just black and purple. This is how tough these guys were. This is how tough Larry Zonka was. He showed up at practice on whatever it was, Wednesday or whenever, after the trainers had told him, you go rest that toe. We'll see about whether you're going to play this week or not when you come back to practice on Wednesday or Thursday. He came back to practice and he was good to go. You know why? In the middle of that night, Larry Zonka in his house, no anesthetic, no numb, nothing, no, took out his drill and drilled a hole through his big toenail. Relieved the pressure. He said that thing squirted, blood went everywhere, but he got it out of there and he played the next week. So, all right. I think I've talked to myself long enough tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, despite the fact that I had no co-host here tonight at all. I'm Brad Michaels. This is First and Mad. brought to you by Mad Maddie's Casino at 8100 West Sahara in Las Vegas, Nevada. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again next week with my co-hosts. And that's it. We're out. Thanks for joining us.
Come on, move rooms and such. Some would say that boy right there is touch. Do we maintain? Nah, not too much. Situation getting too hard to clutch. Yep, it feels like I fall and I can't get up. I gotta hold my head, man, I can't give up. I realize in life.